So in today's demo, we're going to work through building an integration between Clarizen and Salesforce. So we'll have a handful of use cases here. The first one of which is we're going to master products from Salesforce into Clarizen. We're going to look at the fact that there's no products in Clarizen now. So we're going to move those over and master those over from Salesforce. We're going to use the pre-built connectors for both Salesforce and Clarizen in order to do this. The next use case will actually move customers from Clarizen and master those customers from Clarizen into Salesforce. Again, there's no accounts, Clarizen accounts in Salesforce now, so we can see those come over in this case. And what we've done is actually put in the name Clarizen on the run, so we can actually see those secluded from the other records in Salesforce with the Clarizen name on that. So what we did in this case is upsert those records, so you can incrementally update those based on either updates or inserts based on the upsert functionality of Salesforce. And then the last thing we'll do is create a new step from scratch, just so you can see how the Clarizen connector works in this case. So first things first, I'll go into Clarizen here. I'm going to refresh, and we can see that there's no products in here. Now, products is a custom object in Clarizen, so this is not a standard object. We built a custom object to accept this data, so we'd be loading to that custom object in this case. So I'll go over to Studio, and first thing we'll do is we'll open up the products job, and basically what this is doing, I'll kick this off and we'll let that run while we're looking at it here. This is basically querying for the data from Salesforce. It's actually pulling this from the products and price books and then passing that through the agent basically via temp file or memory, and then loading that into Clarizen directly through the connector. And then we can get a response out, but at this point, we're not concerned with that. So it did run, so we did get its success here. You can see by the green checkbox. So we'll go back to Clarizen, and we'll refresh here. And we now have those new products come in from, mastered from Salesforce in this case. So next thing we'll look at, we don't have any Clarizen accounts. So we do have quite a few accounts in here, but built a view in there inside of Salesforce, so we can seclude those accounts and take a direct look at those rather than having to dig through and find those specific accounts that we brought over in this case. So we'll go back over to Jitterbit. We're going to open up the second use case or job, and we can see here that we're grabbing data or querying data from Clarizen for the customers. We're passing that through the agent again, the platform. And then we're doing the upsert, like I mentioned, to Salesforce so that we can incrementally update those going forward based on mastering those records from Clarizen. So I'll go back over to, actually, let's go ahead and kick this off. And we'll let that run. We'll go back to Salesforce. And I'll go ahead and refresh. It might take a sec. Oh, it came through. So ran in 2 seconds and brought over, it looks like about 50 records here. So we can look, there's probably not a lot of data in here. We just mapped up a handful of things here. Got the external ID, et cetera. But the idea is that the connectors are the ones doing this. So what we'll do, we'll take a look at the connectors associated to this. We do have the Salesforce connector, which you're probably familiar with. And then we have the Clarizen connector. So this is the connection to Clarizen. Just your standard URL for Clarizen, and then login and password for authentication. I'll close that up. And then what we'll do, we're going to create a new step from scratch, like I mentioned. We'll create this Clarizen customer extract so you can see what that looks like and how you would build that. So one thing to notice about the connector in this case is that you have your endpoint connection that I've already showed you. You can create, update, delete, or query anything inside of Clarizen in this case directly through the API. So we go through the API with this. but this is a pre-built connector around the API, so it's black boxed for you. You don't have to worry about maintaining anything associated to that connection other than just your credentials. Okay, so we'll go in and create a new query. I'll say new Clarizen query. We can see that that connection again, and this is going to drive us through a wizard to get that data out. So I'll click the next button. And in this case, since we did customers, we'll redo customer again, just so you can see the same thing in the demo. So I'll go to customer and understand, all of the custom standard and custom objects you can see directly in here from Clarizen. It basically just pulls back the data and or the metadata associated to the objects, and then puts them in a list for you here simply to where you just pick that, and you don't have to worry too much about doing WSDLs and all kinds of things in order to get that out. So this is the customer object. I'll go ahead and select all. That's going to grab all of the fields from Clarizen associated to the customer. I'm also going to go into the relationship queries here. So through Clarizen connector, you can actually go to the parent-child relationships. I'm going to grab a couple here. I'll grab country. We're going to look at country, and we're going to grab the name of the country, and then we'll go back and let's grab one other. Let's do state. So we'll grab the name of the state. And the idea there is that, in the standard structure, when we pull this out, you'll see the standard structure, it only brings over the ID because it's basically pointing to an additional objects inside of Clarizen for reference data to that. So we're just going to pull the name and write that out with it. So I'll go ahead and say finish. And then I can create the operation. I'll show you the structure here. There's the entity. And like I mentioned, here's the country. So now we have the name. Comparative to some of the other reference objects, you can see here we only have the ID, but I pulled out the name specifically in this case. All right, so I'll say save this. We'll go ahead and create a new operation. We can see that it looks very similar to what we have here with the customer extract. And all we're going to do is basically build the transformation and the target for this case. So I'll say new transformation. Now I did have, I did use or create that structure previously, so we'll just reuse that one here. And that is the Clarizen customer in this case. And you can see here the country and everything. But here, down here below, these are the fields I pulled out in the original script. So we can see country and state name both in those. So I'll say finish. And then we have the structures. So all I'll do for this is we can basically auto map that. I can hit the auto map directly, but what I'm going to do is actually grab the entity, drag it over to our main object and say auto map, and it auto maps everything up there. The other thing I'll do is grab the country here, and we're going to map that directly to the name in this case. So we'll grab that name and pull that over to country name. And then we'll also do state. Since we pulled out the name on that, we might as well utilize that. So I'll go to state name, pull that in, click save, close this, and we'll refresh. So we've got our transformation done, and now all we need is the target. So this is again the target endpoint of passing that through as a temp file through the structure of the platform agent. And so I'll just pick that one again. We'll take a look at that, and that's just writing it through the platform there. I'll close that, click save, and we've reproduced that first step we have here. You might do a handful of mappings or additional things to that step, but suffice it to say it took a matter of minutes to wireframe that up and get that built. So that concludes the demo for Clarizen to Salesforce bidirectional. If you have any questions, please contact support, and I appreciate your time.